to handle it. That's a key question for voters to decide in this election, and Tuesday's presidential debate should help with that decision about which candidate has the temperament, character, and fitness for the job. We'll talk to Major Garrett about the meeting at the lecterns and the state of the presidential race, including a slew of new polling. Elections and Surveys Director Anthony Salvanto will also join us to look at some new survey data. In Kentucky, a madman with boxes of newly purchased ammunition is on the loose. Schools in the state were closed for the day. Appalachia High School in Georgia is still closed after a student killed 4 there last week. We'll have new reporting on both. We'll also check in with the wildfires out west and the state of migrant crossings at the southern border. Plus, the Department of Justice has launched a second antitrust action against Google. And finally, the Boeing Starliner is back safely on Earth. The crew is still up in space, but a win is a win for the troubled mission. The Daily Report starts in a moment. Hello, thank you for joining us. We begin our report with a quiet day in the campaign because it's about to get noisy. The first debate between Kamala Harris and Donald Trump will take place Tuesday, so the day before they were off the campaign trail preparing. What advisors for each campaign have been saying about how the candidates are preparing reflects the ever-present effort to shape the candidate's public image. Trump, we are told, is going over his policies and plans, but he said there's not much prep to do since he's, quote, been preparing all my life for this debate. Meanwhile, Harris, a former prosecutor, is preparing as she might have for that job, trying to replicate reality with mock debates which include a lectern, lights, cameras, and an aide playing the role of the former president. The latest CBS News polling released over the weekend shows Harris and Trump remain in a virtual tie in the battleground states of Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania. Not much of a change from our last round of polling there a couple of weeks ago. CBS News Chief Washington correspondent Major Garrett joins me now. Okay, Major, let's cut to the chase. What are you focused on with this debate tomorrow?
Former President Trump will tell Americans they are unhappy net with their present. They don't like inflation. They don't like immigration. They may not like the instability in the world. And he will say Vice President Harris is to blame for virtually all of that. But what former President Trump says about the future, I think, is where this debate hinges. Because in his words, he wants mass deportations that, as he said over the weekend, could turn bloody. He wants very high tariffs across the board. His words, not mine. He wants to find long jail sentences for donors and election workers if he's unhappy with the results. Again, his words, not mine. Vice President Harris's challenge is to talk about the direction and the vision she has for the future and to convey that she has the singular strength to not only take on former President Trump, issue by issue, fact by fact, but on that debate over America's future.
And Major, how should we watch a debate, both for the substance, but then also, you know, what happens to debates, how campaigns strategize, what they do with the material after it's done? Give us a sense of how to think about it as a citizen, and then take us behind the scenes and how these debates are used in the process of executing a campaign.
Well, this is not a fully formed campaign yet, John, because Kamala Harris, as the vice president, newly christened as the Democratic nominee, is not as well known as almost everyone who has been in this position has been before in modern American history. She's not a household name. She's not fully formed in terms of definition. Poll after poll, ours and others, show people aren't quite exactly sure what she is all about. That creates a huge opening for her to fill in some of those vague notions about who she is or isn't. There's a real upside potential for the vice president to define that herself, in contrast to former President Trump. And we cannot escape this, John. We simply cannot. Until America elects a woman as president, which we haven't done yet, it is, in a general sense, an impossibility. Not that it can't happen, but that it hasn't happened. So every woman who's a nominee of a major party has to meet that standard. It is a hard-to-define standard of strength, authority, clarity, and vision. Lots of men have done that. All men have done that who've attained the presidency. No woman yet has. That's something that Kamala Harris has volunteered to do and should be tested in her biggest, most visible way on that score tomorrow night.
as you mentioned, that candidates are usually pretty well known by the time debates roll around in presidential campaigns. Vice President Harris is a notable exception. How about the other candidate on the stage, Donald Trump? I mean, if anybody, everybody knows everything about Donald Trump. So you had once talked about candidates who might be giving him a third look. Is that a possibility coming out of this debate, or is that just he's so well known there's little he can do to change impressions?
There is going to be a battle on the debate stage tomorrow night, John, over who the incumbent is in this race. Kamala Harris will portray herself as the face of change, the personification of change, even though she's the sitting vice president. Former President Trump will try to make sure the American people find within him an agent of change, even though he's a former president who will be talking at great length, probably exaggerated in some respects, about his record as a previously serving president. So who the incumbent is and who represents change and is the change agent in this election will be a subtext of tomorrow's conversation.
And finally, a little less than a minute, Major, a slew of polling has come out, including our own CBS News surveys, showing us a very tight race. A lot of people divine all kinds of meaning from. What do you make of the polls, given how close the race is, and what's your mindset about polling going from here until Election Day?
I think it's going to be very close up until the end, and there might be a break one way or the other. I was just in Michigan last week, talked about 20 voters, John. What struck me, not a single one of those 20 voters was undecided, and they broke relatively evenly for Harris and for Trump. Democrats need to understand, whatever they may think about Trump that is negative, his support remains residually strong and a reality in American politics. Persuading people to think differently about Trump is a part of the next 55 or so days in this election.
Major Garrett from Washington, D.C. Thank you so much, Major. Thanks. And a quick programming note, we'll have full coverage of the first debate between Vice President Harris and former President Trump on Tuesday. It's hosted by ABC News, but you can watch right here on CBS News 24/7. Pre-show coverage begins on America Decides at 5 p.m. Eastern. It has been 3 days since a man opened fire on a Kentucky interstate, and no one is in custody. 32-year-old Joseph Couch is the main suspect, but he remains armed and dangerous and on the loose. Christian Benavides has the latest on the investigation.
John, more than a dozen school districts here in southeastern Kentucky have closed. Businesses also did not open their doors today as they continue to search for this alleged gunman, 32-year-old Joseph Couch. Now, Kentucky State Police are leading the manhunt now in its third day in a remote area along Interstate 75 in Laurel County. They're looking for a man suspected of randomly shooting cars along the highway Saturday evening. 5 people were wounded and are expected to survive. The mayor of London, Kentucky, said an anonymous donor has offered up $10,000 for information leading to Couch's capture and arrest. CBS News obtained an arrest warrant that reveals Couch did communicate with a woman prior to the shooting, sending her a text around 5:03 p.m. Saturday. That's just about 30 minutes prior to the shooting taking place. The text read in part, "I'm going to kill a lot of people, well, try at least," and another message saying, "I'll kill myself afterwards." The woman then notified police. Now, a detective put an emergency cell site tracker on Couch's cell phone. The first location was received after the shooting, putting the phone about 1.5 miles from the crime scene. Now, at this point, officers are still out there searching for Couch, but if they come up empty-handed today, they say they'll be back out there tomorrow. John?
Christian Benavides in London, Kentucky. Thank you. Now an update on the school shooting in Winder, Georgia that took place last week. The grandfather of the 14-year-old suspect tells CBS News that the boy's mother received a cryptic text from her son on the morning of the shooting, prompting her to call the school to warn them. And on Monday, police released new information regarding the suspected shooter, Colt Gray, and his father, Colin. Mark Strassman has more.
Hey, John, by far the most interesting new piece of information today came with the release of body cam video. The video gives us all a fresh look at Colt Gray, the suspect in this school shooting, and his father, Colin Gray, who's also been arrested for murder in connection with the killing of 4 people here. In the video, 2 deputies end up at the front door of the Gray house. They're investigating an online threat against a school, and they're asking, in effect, whether Colt Gray is the person who made that threat. Colt denies making the threat, and his father says, in essence, that his son better be telling the truth or he's going to lose his gun privileges. Well, eventually, detectives dropped the case for lack of evidence. 7 months after that video, though, Colin Gray gave his son an AR-style rifle for Christmas, and just last week, 4 people were killed at this school. An AR-style rifle was used in the attack, and Colt Gray is now the suspect under arrest. So there's a lot of people here who are second-guessing what the deputies did last year in that video. But again, they say that they were operating just with the best available information that they had at the time. This community is still very much in the grips of grief, and there is still no date scheduled for students and staff to return to school here. John?
Mark Strassman in Winder, Georgia. Thank you. Record high temperatures have hit several areas of California, Arizona, and Oregon since Friday, extending the fire season and creating drier conditions, which makes wildfires spread faster. The line fire in Southern California has grown past 21,000 acres, which, for reference, is roughly half the size of Washington, D.C. Nearby in Nevada, the Davis fire has burned more than 6,000 acres, which is about 7 times the size of Central Park. Tens of thousands of people across both states have been placed under mandatory evacuation orders, and states of emergency have been declared for the areas by the neighboring governors. CBS News senior national and environmental correspondent Ben Tracy joins us from Mentone, California. Ben, with temperatures near the triple digits, we know about what this is doing to the burning of the fire. What's it doing to the fire crews who are having to fight these fires?
Yeah, John, so there are 2 things making this unusually difficult for firefighters, and one is the temperature, as you mentioned. Temperatures here have been between 100 degrees and 110 degrees for the last several days. Obviously, if you're wearing all that equipment and trying to fight a fire, that just slows everything down and makes it a very grueling process. The other thing, as you can see behind me, are these steep hills, these mountains. And this rugged terrain, firefighters are actually having to hike miles to get in there to find these hot spots because they're not accessible from roads. So you combine the high heat with just the grueling nature of this firefight, and it's a real mess for firefighters.
The line fire near you is creating its own weather through pyrocumulus clouds. Can you help us understand what a pyrocumulus cloud is?
Yeah, so the science behind that is these are basically the dark, dense clouds that can form over a wildfire or a volcano. It's basically formed by heat and smoke, or heat and ash. And once that forms, that can kind of create its own weather system. And we actually saw that happen here yesterday. It started pouring, and there was hail, and you had high winds, and you had lightning. It's good in these systems when you get a lot of rain, because that can be beneficial to fighting the fire. But if that comes along with erratic winds and lightning strikes, that really can just make things worse for firefighters.
Help us understand how this fire season compares to last year's or the years in past. Are things better or worse than usual with respect to these fires?
Worse. This is definitely a very active fire season. We're already at almost 3 times the acreage that burned last year in California, and we're only really getting into the peak of the fire season here. So this could accelerate as we go into the next couple of months. You know, a lot of the acreage burned here in California so far this year is from the Park Fire, which burned in Northern California earlier this summer. That is now the 4th largest fire in California history. And a lot of this, John, is because we've had 2 very wet winters in California where there was all this vegetation that was just primed to burn. So when we had this hot, dry spring, all that stuff dried out, and that is now the fuel that is fueling what you see behind me.
Ben Tracy, thank you so much, Ben. The 6th named storm of 2024 has officially formed off of the coast of the Texas-Mexico border. Tropical storm Francine is gaining strength right now in the Gulf of Mexico. A storm surge watch has been issued for parts of Texas, Louisiana, and Mississippi. The storm is expected to bring heavy wind, rain, and flooding to those areas. Forecasters say Francine could reach hurricane status as soon as Tuesday evening before making landfall in Louisiana on Wednesday. A majority of the Louisiana coast is under a hurricane watch. For more on Tropical Storm Francine and its expected path, here's meteorologist Mike Bettis from our partners at the Weather Channel.
Tropical storm Francine spins in the Gulf of Mexico, likely to make a landfall by midweek here and strengthen along the way and then landfall as a hurricane, most likely right now in Louisiana. You can see that the heavy rain will be there ahead of that with the center of circulation well to the south here. But notice as we go through time, it intensifies, becoming a fairly potent threat here to Louisiana, coastal Mississippi, even into Alabama and the Panhandle. Really heavy rain pumped out of this, so flooding is an issue there, as well as significant wind and significant storm surge. Storm surge could be as high as 10 feet in some locations, and some spots could get a foot or more of rain, with heavy rain extending all the way past Memphis, Tennessee. The other threat we're watching for the remainder of the day today will be significant severe weather here, especially across New York, from Buffalo to Syracuse over toward the Capital District. More storms push their way off the lakes and across the state. Some of these storms could contain large hail, high winds, and a brief opportunity for tornadoes as well. And for more live coverage, you can check us out on the Weather Channel and on your favorite TV streaming device.
Mike Bettis, thank you. Legendary actor James Earl Jones has died at the age of 93. A representative for Jones says he died at his New York home on Monday, surrounded by family. Jones, who won Emmy, Grammy, Oscar, and Tony Awards, is known for his iconic roles in Star Wars, The Lion King, Field of Dreams, and more. Vlad Duthier has a look back on his long life and career.
James Earl Jones was an industry giant.
Steel isn't strong, boy.
Whose unmistakable, deep, booming voice captivated audiences for more than 6 decades.
This field, this game, is a part of our past, Ray.
Jones's career spanned film, television, and theater. In 1968, he had his breakout performance.
When I'm fighting, I feel double good.
The Broadway play, The Great White Hope, based on the life of boxer Jack Johnson, earned him his first Tony Award.
Are you the Black Hope?
Well, I'm black and I'm hoping.
Born in Arkabutla, Mississippi in 1931, Jones was raised by his grandparents on a small farm. As a child, he overcame a severe stutter, which caused him not to speak for years.
Bully would have run me out.
I know that.
Well, why did you?
That's my business, Miss Daisy.
Jones appeared in more than 20 Broadway plays, delivering memorable performances as the raspy old man in Driving Miss Daisy and his portrayal of a working-class father impacted by racism in August Wilson's hit play, Fences.
You put a sir on the end of it when you talk to me.
Yes, sir.
Jesus, you look like hell.
Jones gained international fame on the big screen, too, as the voice of some of the most iconic characters in popular culture.
No, I am your father.
One day, Simba, the sun will set on my time here and will rise with you as the new king.
A recipient of the National Medal of the Arts for his contributions to the arts, Jones garnered numerous awards. He has the rare EGOT, earning an Emmy, Grammy, Oscar, and Tony. Throughout his career, he remembered a lesson in drama school.
Our teachers encouraged us ethnic actors, not to wait until a play came along that had a black guy or an Asian guy or whatever. Pick plays with good characters.
And indeed he did, turning characters of a lifetime into unforgettable performances. Vladimir Duthier, CBS News, New York.
Still to come, Kate Middleton has finished her chemotherapy treatments. She's given an update on what's next. Plus, lawmakers have returned to Capitol Hill and could soon vote to ban non-citizen voting, which is already illegal. That'll take a minute to explain, which we shall do shortly. You're streaming The Daily Report.
These are the stories
1, 2, 3, go!
Of we the people.
We're trying to generate our own hope.
It's a huge deal.
I'm enabling them to feel valued.
Eye on America. Weeknights on the CBS Evening News with Norah O'Donnell.
I had progressively fallen deeper into the world of online sports betting.
The risk is the rush.
What do you think is driving the spike in popularity?
I think it's legality.
If it's legal, I'm going to use it. There are ways to bet when you are 18.
We've created an epidemic of child gambling.
You can't walk into a male dormitory in a college campus without sports betting happening.
It's America's most neglected problem.
I used sports betting as a way to escape, when in reality, I'm choosing self-destruction. Whatever I had left, it was gone.
The purpose of the industry is to get you to play to extinction. And that means until all your money is gone.
Go to the ends of the earth. Reach for the stars.
Yeah, I just took off. That kind of thing.
Oh, that's pretty good. Because there's always something new under the sun on CBS Sunday morning.
America Decides is your place for fact-based, unbiased reporting.
At the White House, at the Capitol, on the campaign trail.
What do you say to those in your party?
Any cracks in the Republican Party?
Our reporters and our anchors travel the country talking to voters like you
about the issues that matter most.
Immigration is really a factor right now
that are going to be driving your decisions.
What would you say to those who say, look, that's just democracy at work?
Listening to you and bringing your voice into our coverage.
I want a strong, proud America.
Is democracy on the ballot in 2024?
Let us help you decide.
America Decides. Stream our expanded one-hour program Monday through Thursday at 5 p.m. Eastern.
Exclusively on CBS News 24/7, the streaming home of CBS News.
People with developmental disabilities were once sequestered by the hundreds of thousands in institutions.
Many of our fellow citizens are suffering tremendously because lack of attention, lack of imagination, lack of adequate manpower.
Disability activists have since torn down barriers blocking them from living at home or in the community.
We conclude that Title II of the ADA requires states to provide community-based treatment for persons with mental disabilities.
But of the 16,000 people who remain in state-operated institutions, half are in 5 states, and Illinois is one of them.
I don't want to live in the institution. It makes me feel discriminated against.
Do you think there are people living in institutions in Illinois that don't need to be living there?
Yeah, because they're proving it as soon as they get out.
Federal law makes it illegal for non-citizens to vote in statewide or national elections. Those who do risk imprisonment or deportation. Nevertheless, House Republicans are pushing legislation to make non-citizen voting illegal. The proposal would require states to obtain proof of citizenship as part of the voter registration process. Democrats have called the bill a non-starter, with Senator Mark Kelly of Arizona describing it as a, quote, solution looking for a problem. But Speaker Mike Johnson has made the issue difficult to ignore by attaching it to a part of a government funding bill ahead of an October 1st deadline for funding the government. Even if banning non-citizen voting is redundant policy, Johnson sees a political benefit in forcing Democrats to vote against an immigration bill ahead of the election. Republicans control 220 seats in the House compared to Democrats who control 211. The Cook Political Report considers 24 upcoming House races to be toss-ups, which will determine if Republicans can expand their majority or if Democrats will reclaim control of the House. Lawmakers ultimately expect some kind of a funding bill will pass before the government shuts down. They have the rest of the month to work out the details. A vote on the Republican proposal to ban non-citizen voting could happen next week. To help us set the record straight, let's bring in CBS News immigration and politics reporter Camila Montoya Galvez. Camila, on the question of non-citizen voting, is there any evidence that this is happening? And why are Republicans trying to ban something that's already illegal?
Hi, John. No, there's no evidence to suggest that immigrants, whether they're here illegally or legally, are voting in federal elections in any significant numbers, and certainly not enough to alter the outcome of any major election here in the U.S. As you underscored, voting in a federal election as a non-citizen immigrant is already a felony under U.S. law, and that has been the case since the 1990s. That applies to immigrants living here illegally after crossing the U.S.-Mexico border or overstaying a visa, but it also applies to legal immigrants, including permanent residents who are not allowed to vote in federal elections. And in addition to facing jail time, they can be deported back to their country of birth. So these fines, these laws are already in place, and these attempts by immigrants to vote in federal elections are rare, according to most studies. And when they do happen, they are investigated and prosecuted by federal authorities, including the Justice Department. But Republican lawmakers, John, have tried to tie the issue of election integrity, which is obviously something that former President Donald Trump tends to focus on, in many campaign rallies with the issue of the U.S.-Mexico border, another major pillar of his campaign, and concerns around the increase in illegal crossings there. And yes, obviously, as you know, border crossings have soared to record levels under the Biden administration. And so the theory, at least on the Republican side, is because illegal immigration has increased dramatically, John, that increases the opportunities, or at least chances, for non-citizens, including those crossing the border, to exploit our election system. But again, there's no evidence to suggest that that is happening. And again, the act of voting in a federal election as a non-citizen is a crime, but this proposal by House Republicans would make it an explicit requirement to ask people to submit documentary evidence to prove that you are a U.S. citizen when you are registering to vote. But critics, of course, argue, John, that this is solving a problem that doesn't necessarily exist, and that it's merely a political ploy to really make it uncomfortable for Democrats to vote on an immigration legislation ahead of an election, and also really to build the foundation to challenge the outcome of an election in November.
Let me ask you about the southern border. What has the pace of migrant crossings looked like as we near the end of the summer here?
Well, John, after soaring to record levels last year and in 2022, illegal crossings along the U.S.-Mexico border dropped to a 4-year low this summer, and that is because of that executive action by President Biden that has severely restricted asylum because of sweltering temperatures along the southern U.S. and because of the Mexican government's actions to stop migrants before they get to the U.S. in the first place. The number of border crossings dropped to a 4-year low, the lowest in September of 2020. In July, the numbers did increase slightly in August, John, according to our internal government data that we obtained here at CBS News, but just slightly. And it does seem like the post-executive order drop has largely materialized and the numbers have plateaued. So the open question now, John, is whether the number of people crossing the border and traveling throughout Latin America to get here increases in the fall, which historically has been the case.
And if, let's imagine they keep going down, you mentioned plateauing, but if they kept going down, or are they close to the limit that the Biden administration set for deactivating that asylum policy? Is that even a question yet, or is that not really a part of the conversation?
Well, right now, the current regulations say that if the daily average of illegal border crossing stays at 1,500 for 7 consecutive days, John, officials can lift this executive order that restricts asylum, but that has not occurred yet. In fact, the daily average right now stands at around 1,800 and 1,900, so we are still a bit far from that. And again, historically, because of the weather changes and the smuggling tactics in the fall, migration typically increases in September, October, and November. So we could see an increase. And additionally, we have reported, too, that the Biden administration is considering amending those regulations to make it even harder to discontinue this policy, which they believe is leading to more control of the border and is deterring people. So they are actually planning right now, John, to amend it by saying that the requirement to lift it would be for that 1,500 number to be in place for 28 days, not just a week.
Camila Montoya Galvez, thank you so much, Camila. Still to come, Apple has unveiled its first smartphone specifically built to use artificial intelligence. We'll take a look at some of the company's new offerings. You're streaming the Daily Report.
On our places, bright, shiny faces.
When you wake up in the morning, we want to be your go-to team.
Nate has one of the quickest minds I've ever seen.
Tony has a way of making people feel comfortable.
Gail has this unbelievable knack to ask the question that you're asking at home.
I've been told I could talk to a tree, and that's pretty much true.
I don't go to work in the morning. I go for coffee with my 2 good friends, and we talk about the world.
Your morning routine just got better. CBS Mornings, weekdays at 7.
It didn't seem like anything could happen, because nothing ever happens in East Palestine, but it did.
Authorities released toxic fumes from 5 derailed train cars.
Resident, please evacuate.
Acute bronchitis due to chemical fumes.
Did you ever have these problems before the derailment?
No, ma'am. This neighborhood's not safe no more.
We can assure the community that there's not vinyl chloride entering their communities.
Then why are there so many people feeling these various symptoms of bloody noses or difficulty breathing, bronchitis?
That's a hard question to answer.
We're talking about one of the most blatant releases of a mixture of some of the most toxic chemicals that we've seen in America.
I feel like now I have a duty to warn other communities. If my daughter has to watch me die of cancer, at least it saves someone else. This case.
It's like a screenplay, something straight out of Hollywood.
But it's not fiction. It's 48 hours.
Human remains found this week.
4 families shattered.
There's no physical evidence.
The mystery would haunt investigators for years.
There's some questions that have to be asked and need to be answered.
Like a John Grisham novel.
A gripping true crime original. 48 hours. Now streaming on the free CBS News app.
Stories that inform.
Or you can be really old at 60, and you can be really young at 85.
Inspire.
How do we unlock the power within ourselves to be who we want to be?
And brighten your day.
The best part of fame is making people feel good. Always send the people home happy.
Make every day a little more like Sunday morning.
Here comes the sun.
Stream now on the free CBS News app.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to our Dragon capsule here in space.
Sightseers in space, the thrill of a lifetime.
Seeing the Earth from space, it was so exhilarating.
But the risks that come with the territory.
There have been 4 fatal accidents. That's a 1% fatal accident rate.
Might make you look before you launch.
If you had 1 out of 100 airplanes falling out of the sky, we'd have a public crisis.
Space tourism, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
Welcome back to the Daily Report. I'm John Dickerson. Here are some additions to our top stories. Jury selection began Monday in the federal trial of 3 former Memphis police officers accused in the death of Tyree Nichols. The defendants have all pleaded not guilty to the charges. They violated Nichols' civil rights when they used excessive force during a traffic stop in January of 2023. Police body cameras captured officers beating Nichols, who later died from his injuries. A man accused of killing 4 Idaho college students in 2022 will get a new venue for his trial. In a court order, the judge raised concerns that Brian Koberger would get a fair trial, citing extensive media coverage of the case. The trial is set for June, but a new location is yet to be decided. Stage is set for the first debate between Vice President Kamala Harris and former President Donald Trump. Both candidates spent Monday preparing, with Harris doing mock debates and Trump going over his policies. Tuesday's debate will take place in the key battleground state of Pennsylvania. During the debate, we're going to hear the candidates talk about their stances on the economy, immigration, and other issues that voters care about. And so we want to discuss that with CBS News Executive Director of Elections and Surveys, Anthony Salvanto, who joins me now to discuss what he found in his latest survey. Okay, Anthony, a puzzler for many people. We know that voters say the economy is their top issue. And so in the survey, the people who overwhelmingly say the economy is their top issue, they tend to be going for Donald Trump. But your findings overall are of a close race. So if on the top issue somebody's saying they want to go for Donald Trump, why doesn't that show up in the overall horse race, which is basically even in those 3 battleground states that you surveyed?
So 2 parts to that. One is that it's the thing that's keeping Donald Trump even in many respects. A second part of that is that you're right that many people say it's a top factor. Republicans are more likely to say it's a top factor. Republicans, in fact, I mean, here's a little fun fact. About 1 in 10 Republicans say that the overall economy is good. And come on, that's part of that is taking a shot at the other side that's in power. And we see that from Democrats of the Republicans in the White House and now vice versa. So some of that is already baked in. But the other part of it, final point, is what about the economy? And in this, I find very interesting the way in which people assess themselves in their pocketbooks. Yeah. It's not administration to administration. The better correlate is it's pre-COVID, when Donald Trump was president, to now. And you look at people assessing their own finances now and before COVID, and you get these sizable numbers, particularly among working class voters, who say that their finances are worse now largely because of inflation. So it's that component of the economy that's really important, and that is all there in that mix.
I was interested in, you asked in the survey about the cognitive health of the candidates. In that case, Kamala Harris is ahead, as I recall. Given that that's, yeah, there you go, that has the cognitive health, again, you have Harris with a considerable lead on that question. But overall, it's basically a totally split race. So
part of this is there are Republicans and there are Trump voters who say that they both have the cognitive health, which is to say that Kamala Harris does, but they're not going to vote for her. And the reason I ask this again is not only to just do that contextual comparison between what happened in the last debate with President Biden, but also to show that in that context for Joe Biden, it was disqualifying for many voters. But right now, that's kind of out of frame. Now it's not part of the central discussion. Maybe it comes back into it. But right now, it's okay. There are some Republicans who say, yep, she does, but there's other reasons why they would vote for Trump.
But that meaning it's out of frame, does that mean that they might say Donald Trump doesn't have the cognitive health to serve, and yet they're voting for him anyway?
No, no. That is when you are voting for Donald Trump, you think he does. And that is a sort of one-to-one straight-up correlation.
Final question, enthusiasm. You had covered a lot how there was not so much enthusiasm in the Democratic Party for Joe Biden. Where is the enthusiasm picture now between the two candidates?
So going into the debate, the story you want to understand is that this got back to even because Democrats got more enthusiastic and then said that they were more likely to turn out and vote where they had lagged. And you want to see that as excitement as a precursor to turnout in the sort of collective mind. So yes, Democrats say they're feeling excited, even more so at this point than among Trump voters and Republicans. Excitement is not the only reason one votes. One votes out of duty, one votes out of habit, et cetera. But the end-all point here is now you get Democrats who are even with Republicans in stated propensity to vote. This is a big part, not all, but this is a big part of our likely voter model when we tell you what the likely electorate is going to be, because people say they're definitely going to vote. By and large, they'll tell you, looking past elections, they do, in fact, definitely vote. And so that's how excitement leads into a part of turnout.
Excellent. Anthony Salvanto, thank you, as always, for walking us through all of those numbers. A federal trial started Monday over a confrontation between supporters of Donald Trump and a Biden-Harris campaign bus back in 2020. The case stems from allegations of a so-called Trump train that threatened and harassed the bus on a highway in Texas. An attorney for the plaintiffs said the incident was an organized 90-minute attack during which Trump supporters allegedly tried to run the bus off the road. They say the incident was meant to intimidate the bus's passengers, and the bus was traveling on the last day of early voting. The defense says the defendants acted lawfully and that they were exercising their rights to free speech. Catherine, Princess of Wales, will resume limited public duties later this year after completing chemotherapy. The 42-year-old British royal announced Monday she has finished this round of treatments 6 months after making her cancer diagnosis public. She spoke about her battle with the illness in a video alongside Prince William and their 3 children. CBS News correspondent Tina Krause has more from London.
Kensington Palace released a rare and intimate look at Princess Kate's family life during her battle with cancer.
As the summer comes to an end, I cannot tell you what a relief it is to have finally completed my chemotherapy treatment.
The 42-year-old announced in March she was being treated for an undisclosed type of cancer found during a major abdominal surgery in January.
Life as you know it can change in an instant, and we've had to find a way to navigate the stormy waters and road unknown.
The mother of 3 says her diagnosis gave her a new perspective on everything.
Is this filming?
The new video shows 11-year-old George, 9-year-old Charlotte, and 6-year-old Louis enjoying life with their parents near their family home in eastern England. One scene shows Kate's parents playing cards with their grandchildren.
This time has above all reminded William and me to reflect and be grateful for the simple yet important things in life, which so many of us often take for granted, of simply loving and being loved.
8 weeks ago, Kate thrilled crowds when she visited Wimbledon and got a standing ovation at Center Court. The princess plans to carry out a few royal duties later this year, but says her focus now is doing what she can to stay cancer-free. Tina Kraus, CBS News, London.
For the second time in less than a year, Google is going to trial over alleged monopolistic practices. This time, it's over advertisements online. We'll explain the case ahead. You're streaming the Daily Report.
Washington is the seat of power. National security, foreign policy, global economics, every story comes through Washington in some way. We bring some of the most powerful voices in America to the table. We don't just ask the questions, you have to go deeper. We try to understand what's at the heart of the issue we're talking about, to then come forward with solutions.
Face the Nation on CBS.
The justices ruled that Harvard and the University of North Carolina violated the Constitution.
In the aftermath of the Supreme Court decision to end affirmative action in college admissions, uncertainty sets in for some students of color.
Affirmative action really gave us an equal opportunity.
CBS Reports explores the historic decision and what it means for those chasing an opportunity to change their lives.
I knew that college was the ticket to break this cycle.
The end of affirmative action, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
America Decides is your place for fact-based, unbiased reporting.
At the White House, at the Capitol, on the campaign trail.
What do you say to those in your party? Any cracks in the Republican Party?
Our reporters and our anchors travel the country talking to voters like you
about the issues that matter most.
Immigration is really a factor right now
that are going to be driving your decisions.
What would you say to those who say, look, that's just democracy at work?
Listening to you and bringing your voice into our coverage.
I want a strong, proud America.
Is democracy on the ballot in 2024?
Let us help you decide.
America Decides on CBS News 24/7.
Stream our expanded one-hour program Monday through Thursday at 5 p.m. Eastern.
An original documentary from CBS Reports.
AI is among the most world-changing technologies ever.
Curing diseases, scientific breakthroughs, making lives better.
They can help us with medical discoveries, scientific discoveries, doing better agriculture, having cures for things like Alzheimer's.
It's also going to really transform the way we work.
The uplifting potential of artificial intelligence is limitless.
It gives you a friend, somebody to chat with 24/7 that is non-judgmental. He makes me feel loved and desired.
And so are its downfalls.
The problem with all this AI is that it's unpredictable and uncontrollable. The choices we make now will have lasting effects for decades, maybe even centuries.
The ChatGPT revolution, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
We are about to see American weapons in the hands of Mexican cartels.
A gun pipeline to Mexico.
We are arming the cartels.
100%, no doubt about it.
Happening right under our noses.
Who's doing something about this? Nobody.
A CBS Reports exclusive.
Most Americans have no idea that we are effectively arming the enemy next door.
This is the story the American people need to know.
Arming cartels, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
Federal prosecutors have charged 2 people for allegedly leading an online group of white supremacists and plotting assassinations. According to the indictment, 2 leaders of the so-called Terrorgram network shared a hit list of high-value targets, including a senator and a federal judge. Members of Terrorgram were allegedly encouraged to take action against targets and carry out other terror acts like bombing critical infrastructure. The goal, according to the indictment, was to sow chaos and speed up the, quote, rise of a white ethno-state. The Justice Department launched its second antitrust trial against Google on Monday. The DOJ accuses Google of illegally monopolizing the digital ad market. This comes 1 month after a federal judge ruled that Google monopolized the online search market. Nico Grant joins us now from Oakland, California. He's a technology correspondent for the New York Times and has covered Google extensively over the years. Nico, can we start just with a definition of terms here? What is the ad market that we're talking about for those who aren't in the know?
Right. You know, Google obviously very famously has search and it has YouTube, places where it serves ads. But when we say the ad tech business of Google, this is a part that most consumers don't see. It's behind the scenes. You know, every time you go to a publisher's website, whether it's the New York Times, whether it's the Washington Post, the page loads and you see an ad in the middle of a story. You might see it on the right margin. And this is called a display ad that is found across the web. Essentially, the division within Google that helps to place a lot of these types of ads across the web is what's come under scrutiny in this particular case. Google has technology that publishers use to try to sell ad space. It has technology that marketers use to place ads. And then it has these auction systems that work in the middle as exchanges. And the Department of Justice thinks that that's simply too much concentration of power.
And just to put a figure on this, as I understand it, that 78% of Google's parent company, Alphabet's revenue, and that's $307 billion in revenue, 78% comes from this ads. In other words, this is a big piece of business.
That is the figure for Google Ads overall. So that would include search, which we saw in another DOJ case that resolved last month. And that also includes YouTube and ads on, Google Maps and other places. The particular division within that broad figure is worth about $31 billion in revenue last year, which is 10% of Google's total revenue of $307 billion. I mean, still quite large for, most industries.
And so the Justice Department is saying basically what? That other people who would like to be in the ad game just can't be because Google has basically owns every single piece of it all the way through?
The Justice Department's arguing that Google has rigged this market in its favor. It says that it's used different tactics over the years to do so. One is a major acquisition of a company that most of your viewers might not know. It was called DoubleClick, and it was a big player in the online digital ad ecosystem. Google bought that company, and with that purchase was able to start to concentrate power over different parts of this ecosystem. And the company, the Justice Department is also saying that the company bought other businesses over the years and that it has up to 90% of market share over these types of ads that we see on many websites. And so they are calling for a breakup of this business and a divestment of some type where we might see a part of Google being spun out if the DOJ is successful.
And just under a minute left, Nico, Google says the allegations are, quote, wrong on the facts and it says customers choose Google because its services are the best. What would happen if Google loses out here? How would that change the way the world works?
Well, it could be an important precedent within big tech. There are some legal experts that say that this could be a ruling, if it goes in the DOJ's favor, that impacts Amazon and other players in which a company is basically building a marketplace and then also acts as a major player within that market. And so, consumers might not see a big difference in Google, how it operates, but it could be used as a lever to continue to regulate the tech industry.
Nico Grant from the New York Times. Thank you, as always, Nico, for walking us through all that.
Thank you.
In a product launch Monday, Apple unveiled a slate of new gadgets that feature artificial intelligence. The announcement included details about the new iPhone 16, which is expected to hit U.S. stores next month. Here's Donna Bacchus.
Artificial intelligence is at the core of Apple's new iPhone 16.
iPhone continues to make a profound impact on all of our lives. Apple Intelligence will supercharge these experiences and so many more.
The new Apple Intelligence suite of AI features will include capabilities like a smarter Siri and AI-powered writing tools. Users will also be able to create their own custom emojis. Apple is not alone in placing a growing emphasis on AI features. Smartphone makers Google and Samsung have also loaded their devices with AI capabilities. But a new CNET survey found consumers are not impressed.
We found that about a quarter of smartphone owners don't actually find AI features are helpful.
Abrar Al-Hidi is a technology reporter at CNET.
It sends a signal that companies haven't necessarily convinced people that this is something you need to have on your phone.
When it comes to upgrading cell phones, the survey found the main motivations for adult smartphone owners are longer battery life, more storage, and better camera features.
They just want to have a phone that lasts, that can store all their data and all their photos.
45% of people say they are reluctant to pay for AI, and 34% are concerned about privacy.
Security and privacy are two of the main concerns when it comes to AI because it's not necessarily clear where this data is going or where it's being pulled from.
Apple insists users' information is kept private.
Your data is never stored or shared with Apple. It's used only to fulfill your requests. And in a first for the industry, independent experts can continuously verify this privacy promise. This is an extraordinary step forward for privacy and AI.
But time will tell whether users are willing to take that step. Danya Backus, CBS News, Los Angeles.
Still ahead, the troubled Boeing Starliner is back on solid ground after being stuck in space for more than 3 months. We'll have an update. You're streaming the Daily Report.
Go to the ends of the earth.
Right now.
We got something crazy. And reach for the stars.
Here we are. Time.
Yes, it's my comeback.
Hey, this is pretty fun. But wait, there's more.
Experience thought-provoking.
Welcome to the idea of being a human being.
Innovative and truly original reporting.
Look through a telescope and go, wow.
Because there's always something new under the sun on CBS Sunday morning.
At this moment, terrorists could be plotting another attack.
9/11 triggered a counter-terrorist system that included a secret database.
This person needs a closer look.
A growing list of nearly 2 million people, including some Americans who say they're innocent.
For 1 hour flight, I have to spend 6 hours to go and come back.
CBS Reports explores the system, the people responsible for it, and those pushing for change.
I'm not fighting against them. I'm fighting for them to do the right thing.
The Watch List, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
Don't miss true crime anytime you want, anywhere you go. With the 48 Hours podcast. Real crimes, real lives, real justice.
There's some questions that have to be asked and need to be answered.
Listen to 48 Hours on Apple Podcasts.
An original documentary from CBS Reports.
Imagine yourself in Manhattan with no police, no army, no mayor.
The people of Haiti stare down poverty, corruption, natural disasters, and violence.
90% of the guns that are used by gangs in Haiti are American guns.
But with an unbreakable spirit and eternal optimism.
There are days where I cry, but we can't be discouraged. We still believe in Haiti.
They're still able to look ahead with hope.
Haiti is on the brink of transformation, a radical shift. Nations are coming together and saying things must change.
Fighting for Haiti, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
Hey there, welcome to The Uplift.
I thought she was a groom, and I stepped back and I went, oh, you're the queen. She's going to be with me every instant that I'm alive.
I just wanted to see if you'd go to Disneyland with me today.
I look over at him and he's smiling.
I'm going to remember that the rest of my life.
They told us when he was going to be born, he was only going to live for 30 minutes. It's really a miracle that he's with us today.
The Uplift. Stream now on the free CBS News app.
When you wake up in the morning, we want to be your go-to team.
On our places, bright, shiny faces.
I don't go to work in the morning. I go for coffee with my 2 good friends, and we talk about the world.
Your morning routine just got better. CBS Mornings.
A CBS News investigation. People looking for love, finding their life savings gone.
This could happen to anybody.
And sometimes losing their lives. Anything for love. Now streaming on the free CBS News app.
On Wall Street, the markets rebounded after their worst week in nearly 18 months. The Dow Jones is up nearly 500 points. Both the Nasdaq and S&P 500 were also in the green. The Nasdaq was up over 1%, while the S&P was up over 1%. Boeing climbed 3.36% upon news that the airplane manufacturer reached a tentative deal Sunday with its largest labor union on a new contract, averting a potential strike. The future of the Boeing Starliner, or when it will be cleared again for spaceflight, is still up in the air after it returned to Earth over the weekend without its 2 test pilots. NASA ruled it too risky to bring Butch Wilmore and Sonny Williams back to Earth on board the troubled spacecraft. Both astronauts have already spent 3 months on the International Space Station and will remain there until February, when they can hitch a ride back on the SpaceX capsule. NASA has conceded that not having them on board for the return flight left a knowledge gap because of the data they would have provided on how the spacecraft performed on the journey back home. Here's a look at some of the stories we're covering in our next hour. Vice President Kamala Harris and former President Donald Trump will meet face-to-face Tuesday for their first debate. We'll tell you what both campaigns have been doing to prepare. Plus, Congress is back in session after a long break. House Republicans are pushing for proof of a citizenship vote. We'll take a look at that. And Louisiana is bracing for a hurricane later this week. We'll track the tropical storm Francine as it picks up strength in the Gulf of Mexico. You're streaming the Daily Report.
Okay, so let's just start at the beginning.
Well, let me start with this. What is at stake here?
What is the answer then?
Do you know why?
You want me to just keep going?
Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
Were there death threats?
How is this possible?
What's wrong with that argument?
Are you saying they lied?
Have you told the government that?
Why won't you say the word crisis?
You're not answering my question.
This really
is that scary?
Does that make sense?
What do you mean?
What does that mean in
Did any of that make sense?
What's your response?
What happened?
Why?
It's time for the CBS News Original 60 Minutes, Sunday on CBS and streaming on Paramount+.
There is no more room in our city.
New York City is receiving record numbers of migrants.
Today, we're going to have more than 500 adults and children come through that door.
Tensions rise as shelters reach max capacity.
We don't have to take care of them.
CBS Reports goes inside a crisis cities and families are facing as they fight to survive.
The United States still has a glimmer of hope for people to come here.
Fighting for a future. Now streaming on the free CBS News app. An original documentary from CBS Reports.
Since you started La Soup in 2014, do you have any sense as to how much food you've rescued from the landfill?
We've rescued 4.5 million pounds.
I can't even fathom how much food that is.
And that's one little person in one little city in America. We're going to call this chicken piccata. We did 450 of these meals today.
This is the exact dish that you and I are going to have.
Yep.
Oh my God.
Is it good?
Mm-hmm.
Having a plan of how to keep people fed should be in every single city.
So if we eliminated food waste, could we eliminate
hunger? Yes.
Eating Trash, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
America Decides is your place for fact-based, unbiased reporting.
At the White House, at the Capitol, on the campaign trail. What do you say to those in your party?
Any cracks in the Republican Party? Our reporters and our anchors travel the country talking to voters like you
about the issues that matter most.
Immigration is really a factor right now
that are going to be driving your decisions.
What would you say to those who say, look, that's just democracy at work?
Listening to you and bringing your voice into our coverage.
I want a strong, proud America.
Is democracy on the ballot in 2024?
Let us help you decide.
America Decides on CBS News 24/7.
Stream our expanded one-hour program Monday through Thursday at 5 p.m. Eastern.
When people say who's first to get in the morning, that would be me. Morning news matters because it sets the tone for your day, and it's a way of getting you started.
Day to day, that first draft of history, it happens right here.
We're going to uplift you. We're going to send you out your way.
We take you places, we teach you new things, and we make you feel like, you know, it's not all bad.
People say to me, you always seem to be having a good time. And you know what? You're right.
Your morning routine just got better. CBS Mornings, weekdays at 7.
I'm John Dickerson. Join me for the Daily Report, weekdays on CBS News 24/7.
For the first time, Kamala Harris and Donald Trump meet on the debate stage. Join CBS News 24/7 for live coverage with pre- and post-debate analysis from our political team. Special coverage begins at 5 Eastern on CBS News 24/7.
Welcome to the Daily Report for September 9th, 2024. I'm John Dickerson. Someday in a few years, this show might start with a surprise challenge to America, a national security threat, a pandemic, or a financial shock. Will the next president have the right qualities to handle it? That's a key question for voters to decide in this election, and Tuesday's presidential debate should help with that decision about which candidate has the temperament, character, and fitness for the job. We'll talk to Major Garrett about the meeting at the lecterns and the state of the presidential race, including a slew of new polling. Elections and Surveys Director Anthony Salvanto will also join us to look at some new survey data. In Kentucky, a madman with boxes of newly purchased ammunition is on the loose. Schools in the state were closed for the day. Appalachia High School in Georgia is still closed after a student killed 4 there last week. We'll have new reporting on both. We'll also check in with the wildfires out west and the state of migrant crossings at the southern border. Plus, the Department of Justice has launched a second antitrust action against Google. And finally, the Boeing Starliner is back safely on Earth. The crew is still up in space, but a win is a win for the troubled mission. The Daily Report starts in a moment. Hello, thank you for joining us. We begin our report with a quiet day in the campaign because it's about to get noisy. The first debate between Kamala Harris and Donald Trump will take place Tuesday, so the day before they were off the campaign trail preparing. What advisors for each campaign have been saying about how the candidates are preparing reflects the ever-present effort to shape the candidate's public image. Trump, we are told, is going over his policies and plans, but he said there's not much prep to do since he's, quote, been preparing all my life for this debate. Meanwhile, Harris, a former prosecutor, is preparing as she might have for that job, trying to replicate reality with mock debates which include a lectern, lights, cameras, and an aide playing the role of the former president. The latest CBS News polling released over the weekend shows Harris and Trump remain in a virtual tie in the battleground states of Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania. Not much of a change from our last round of polling there a couple of weeks ago. CBS News Chief Washington correspondent Major Garrett joins me now. Okay, Major, let's cut to the chase. What are you focused on with this debate tomorrow?
Former President Trump will tell Americans they are unhappy net with their present. They don't like inflation. They don't like immigration. They may not like the instability in the world. And he will say Vice President Harris is to blame for virtually all of that.